Hi, good morning. My name is Patrick Hua. That's my Twitter handle. If you'd like to tweet questions or comments at me, I'll make sure I answer them in the break. So today I'm here to help you level up and find the way of being the lead developer. And on this path, we'll explore what we mean by a lead developer and some of the challenges that you'll actually find along the way. As Mary said, I work for a bank, and we're hopefully changing the way that banking services are accessed. So we like to say that we're on the mission to building the mobile bank the world loves to use, and we're one of the first sort of challenger banks with a European banking license based in Germany and Berlin. And it's one of the sort of passions of what we are proud delivering, a very sort of digital-first organization. And we're unlike any bank that you'd actually see. So as a CTO, it's probably rare you'd see a CTO in a hoodie. And that's kind of a bit of a reflection of some of the culture that we have. We have more than 500,000 users already after having our banking license for just over a year. And I'm excited to talk that we'll be launching in the UK and the US at some point in the upcoming future. But my role as CTO there is really about nurturing the great engineering culture that we have and sort of encouraging the technical leaders at our sort of organization. So part of my background is actually helping develop our sort of engineering leaders, and we are looking for brilliant engineers to join us on that journey. So previously, I used to work in 14 years sort of consulting, actually with ThoughtWorks, one of the sponsors. And some of the books that I've written are sort of focused around this. But the one that's probably most relevant for this sort of conference is really this one about talking with tech leads. And this is really about a collection of interviews talking with people who've been on this journey, some who have just been starting out, sort of captured very early on in their sort of path, and then people who've been on that path for a while, and hopefully it helps you understand some of the challenges that people have. And one of my passions is really about running sort of training for tech leads. So it's an interesting challenge for engineers when they first move into the role of either an engineering manager or a tech lead. It's quite a different skill set, as some of you probably will know, and some of you are probably discovering on your way. And I hope to help you and sort of share some experiences and sort of tips about how to be more effective in this. Which brings us to our quest today. And on our small journey together, I hope to share with you some stories, some tips, and some strategies as we uncover the way of what it means to be a lead developer. And what's interesting on this way as we discover this path is that we will definitely encounter different challenges. So everyone, as an engineer, encounters lots of different challenges. And one thing that you will learn as a problem solver is that when you overcome these challenges, you grow. And this is one of the exciting parts of taking on this role and the path of the lead developer, is that you have a different way of being able to grow and learn and have an impact that you couldn't necessarily have just as an engineer. And it may seem stressful at the time as you encounter each of these different challenges, but I assure you that when you overcome them, you will grow and you will learn from them. Now, on our path today, we will encounter some challenges, and you may encounter some, perhaps all, maybe even none of these. And I discover many other challenges that we do not have time to cover today. But I hope that you'll benefit from understanding some of these things and how you actually overcome them. Now, after I talked to a lot of different tech leads and sort of lead developers, one thing that I found interesting is that your path will be unique. So the way of the lead developer will be unique to yourselves. And what I hope to share is perhaps some commonalities which may overlap. And with some focused support and a little bit of insight from today, I hope to help you level up. So on this quest, you have to prepare yourself with a diverse range of skills and experiences. In order to succeed, you have to be aware of each challenge and choose widely about which skill you draw upon to overcome each challenge. Now, not all skills will always work. So there's a difference between being a developer and a lead engineer and being able to be successful at overcoming these challenges. And what's really important is that you focus on developing the skill set and the tool set that you use and draw upon them from different perspectives to be successful. And beware, there are dangers along the path. And I hope to prepare you for some of them today. And on our quest, we will actually encounter a number of specific monsters. So Greek mythology contained legendary creatures to watch out for, like the Medusa with the snakes on her head, whose gaze would turn people into stone, or the Minotaur, the man-eating monster with the body of a man and the head and a tail of a bull. Now, the creatures we encounter on our way are perhaps not so well known, And I hope that through this story you learn a little bit more about them, what dangers they offer, and how to overcome them. And please, 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 pay it forward and warn others on how to avoid some of the creatures we'll encounter today. So I hope you're ready for the quest, and I'm excited to be your guide. Let's go. Now, as you start this journey, cast your mind back to perhaps where you are in your own company, and perhaps a conversation you had with somebody about asking you, could you be a lead developer for this particular team or this particular sort of project? You say yes, but then ask yourself, what does this actually mean? What do you do differently from being an engineer? How do you behave? And what does it mean to be a lead developer? You have little time, but often you'll stumble across your first sort of challenge. And this one today is really about talking about the modes in which you operate. Now, as an engineer, what you'll be operating in most of the time is what I call maker mode. So this is your default common mode and how you function as a software developer. What do I mean by this? Now, in maker mode, as an engineer, you like to think about what value you add to your sort of team and your project. And when you're an engineer, you often view your value through the sort of code that you write and the functionality that this code actually enables. So you get rewarded as an individual contributor for writing a lot of code. Now, one of the other interesting things as you go on your journey as an engineer is actually also recognizing that you get to solve really hard problems. So people will come to you with more and more complex problems and ask you, how do you actually break this down? How do we solve this? What are our options? The other sort of perspective as an engineer grows in their sort of career is often about demonstrating the knowledge that they've amassed, the sort of challenges and problems that they've solved, and having experience and perhaps being that one person that people go to where questions can always be answered because you know about that. Uh-oh, but I think we've encountered our first monster. And this one is called the mirror monster. Now, the mirror monster is a unique creature that has been seen in the shadows sitting next to lead developers at their side. Like in Alice Through the Looking Glass, the mirror monster casts a reflection that doesn't only amplify, but also changes the behaviors of people. And unfortunately, like in Wonderland, the changes that the mirror monster induces are often destructive. So when the mirror monster is sitting at your side as a lead developer, you perhaps work in maker mode in overdrive. So you stay heads down coding, perhaps ignoring the problems that other people in your team are having, even though you should be looking out for how you help other people. Or perhaps you actually want to solve all the most complex problems and hoard the most complex problems because this is how you've been rewarded in the past and you want to demonstrate that you can still solve them. And you cast the easier, simpler problems to other people in your team. And of course, you have a lot of knowledge that you've amassed over time. And with the mirror monster at your side, you always have this sense that you need to be right to correct people or to be the winner in battles and arguments. So beware of the mirror monster, and I want to share a little bit of a story from early on in my sort of career. So I worked with a really well-respected lead developer, and we were working on a .NET application, building a very complex registration workflow system. And one of the exciting things is our lead developer champions to sort of teach us some of the skills and knowledge that they had. So he convinced management to invest in an OO bootcamp for the entire team. So we were here as a team, and this sort of lead developer convinced people to do this class. We were super excited. We were able to learn about more OO concepts and understand how we might apply them to the domain. Now, we started applying these, and we were really excited to go back to the application we were working on and start seeing some of these ideas in realization. And we thought we were doing a really wonderful job. We thought we'd been applying a lot of these concepts about sort of single responsibilities, good encapsulated ideas, avoiding sort of ER or OR sort of roles and focusing on nouns as names of classes. And we were really excited and happy. However, there was something amiss, and our lead developer was somehow not happy with what we were producing. Now, what was really interesting and an early lesson for me on this journey was really how did this lead developer cope with perhaps not the result of what he was expecting from what we were working on. And what we found out through one late sort of evening that we weren't there is that we would come in the next morning and we found that the entire code base had been rewritten. So imagine yourself excited, you've churned out some wonderful code that you thought was wonderful, only to find out that all of it has been removed effectively and rewritten. How do you think you would actually feel? I certainly know how I felt and how other people felt on that team. And this is really a good example of this mirror monster in action, of a person wanting to really own all of the code and responsibility. And one of the difficulties about leading engineers is sometimes being able to let go and make sure that you sort of cast this mirror monster away to the side. So the first step in overcoming the mirror monster is really recognize when you operate too much in this maker mode. And the focus that you should be having as you move towards the ideas and the mental mindset of a lead developer is shifting away from this maker mode and moving from a maker to what I call a multiplier. So multiplier is where you add the most value as a lead developer and where you should be focusing your time. So when you go back to your teams and you actually think about the value that you were adding as an engineer, you should be looking at how you add and multiply the value that the team has in total. Consider yourself like a gardener, like you're nurturing the environment in which people add value. And what you have the most value of doing is helping other engineers write better code more effectively by giving timely feedback and allowing them to make mistakes. You want to help other people sort of solve problems, perhaps by coaching and guiding them how to break more complex problems down into smaller steps, but letting them solve that problem so that people have that sort of sense of recognition and progress as they solve problems and learn. And as people gain knowledge, making sure you create an environment where people can share that knowledge so that everyone can sort of grow and learn. And there is no sort of dearth of problems or knowledge to sort of learn or share because our industry is changing all the time. So there are opportunities for everyone to learn and to share all the time. And what's really key to be an effective lead developer is creating this environment where you can actually nurture and grow other people and the team so they can share this idea. So shift modes to being a multiplier, and you will overcome this challenge. And the mental sort of message that you should be sort of reiterating to yourself is thinking about what got you here won't get you there. As you shift modes from being an engineer to a lead developer, you really need to start thinking about how do you multiply rather than make and redefine your value. And when you do, congratulations. You will have overcome the mirror monster and have leveled up. So on our way to the lead developer, the second challenge we encounter has to do with problems, solutions, and how you perceive them. So think about when you are an engineer, what do problems and solutions look like? What feedback do you get to know that you're correct in making sure that you're on your way and doing the right thing? Perhaps you have things like tests that help you give you an idea about whether or not the code you write is actually working as expected. Perhaps you work with product owners, testers, or users who are continually giving feedback about this is what they want or don't want. Perhaps you work in some sort of agile or timebox fashion such that you know you delivered or didn't deliver the things that you had expected to deliver. And you certainly know from deploying new software whether or not it works, because users will come to you if they don't. So what do all these feedback mechanisms have in place as an engineer? Tests, feedback from users, timebox, and deployment tests. A lot of these things are all about binary. And these are really about the mode of problem solving and feedback that you as engineers will typically have. Now, what's interesting is we may have stumbled across our second monster, and this one is called the switch monster. So the switch monster is a nefarious monster that really beds in this binary mode of thinking. It frequently attaches itself to your shoulder and whispers in your ears, reinforcing that there is one true answer, one correct answer, and you have to find it before you actually solve this problem. It's constantly asking you, what is this correct answer, and when do you know that you're actually right? It nudges you towards this binary mode of thinking, and rather than actually exploring different types of solutions that might solve the problem, it's asking you for what is this true answer. So in the world of interacting with computers, compilers, and tests, the switch monster may be right. There may be an answer that you can prove that is correct. However, as a lead developer, you tend to straddle two worlds. One is still being this developer where you interact with computers and where you have this world of correct or non-correct solutions. But the majority of your time will be spent in the real world, and that's right here, right now. And this real world is a world full of people like yourselves. And if there's anything that you will know, having played this role as a lead developer, There are rarely binary or correct solutions when it comes to people. So in this mode, you need to start thinking that blurry is really about the new binary. And what this means is that there is rarely a best practice or a single solution that will work when it comes to people. Such as when you're actually communicating to some people, you might need to actually reinforce and repeat this message a number of times. Some people will prefer to have it taught to them and taught through them. Other people will prefer to read things in an email. And there isn't one single solution that will solve this for all types of people. So sometimes there are solutions that are good enough for now, and actually you will need to change that solution as time progresses. So in the real world, in this world of people, you have to deal with trade-offs and understand that solutions are fuzzy and are blurry. So imagine yourself back with your team, and there's a design discussion. Imagine that there's a new application being developed, and they're debating about whether or not the age-old debate today of we build a modular monolith or go with microservices. There are valid concerns on both sides, pros and cons, and the team just cannot move forward. So the question is here, do you step in to make the final decision? Now remember, the switch monster may be sitting on your shoulder telling you, yes, perhaps, step in, make the right answer. However, you have to remember that the switch monster is rarely correct when it comes to people. So in this example concrete state, it might be true, but you always have to ask yourself about it depends. Before you step in, you need to consider the trade-offs that you're making and the decision that you're going to make if it's going to be worth it in the long term. So in the examples of stepping in to perhaps make the final decision, you need to consider things such as the quality of the decision. Is that if you step in, is there information that other people have that you'll miss, which will mean that you don't have as much of a good solution? Perhaps there's something about commitment, and you really need everyone's buy-in to that. And if you step in and override what other people have had, half the team may not actually be committed to seeing it through, and you may have the right solution, but you may not have a working solution, and there's a big difference. The other sort of condition that you might need to think about is really about the timeliness. So some decisions are really key and critical, such as when there's a deployment outage or some sort of production issue. You need quick resolution, but in order to solve the root causes of that, you might need to take a lot more time to understand what actually is going on. So before you actually say, yes, the right decision is to step in and make the final decision, you need to consider the trade-offs that you're making and what you're actually having. Now, a model that can help you make better decisions is one called the Vroom-Yetten decision-making model. So you can go all the way from being autocratic, so you make this decision, or you can even seek input as a consultant, sort of consultative mode of decision-making, but you still make that final decision. You might talk to individuals or bring them together as a group, but you're clear that you still have that final authority to make the decision. Or you can choose to be a more collaborative in your decision-making process and bring the team together to act more as a facilitator to come to a right decision. And this may be the mode you want to actually take when you're actually thinking about how you actually come to an agreement of some sort. Now, even when you talk about consensus-based sort of decision-making, there are also other interesting models to look at. And one of my favorite is this one called Roman voting. So one of the challenges that I hear a lot of people say is that, it's really hard to get everyone to agree all the time if we're going to take a consensus. But what's interesting in teams is that you have people that are fully committed, people who don't really matter what the result is, or they're happy to go with a group, and people who are vehemently against what the outcome is. So in Roman voting, you have actually 3 ways of voting. So you can sort of say, yes, I fully support this idea, or you can say, no, I'm very much against this idea. And then for other people, I'm happy to go with the flow is kind of the third option. So in this example of consensus-driven, it's important to address the concerns of the people that are completely opposed to decision and make sure that they're either okay with the results or they move into a fully commitment. But even in what seems to be a very binary mode of thinking, there are actually 3 options here. So what's really key around dealing with a switch monster is really thinking about your tool set and how do you go about approaching problems and thinking about different ways of solving problems that will work in different circumstances. So I advise you to collect your own mental models, ways of looking at the problem and the world, and appreciate there are often more than just one solution to a problem, which is what you may be trained in as an engineer and what you are rewarded for. And if you can see these multiple different solutions, talk about these trade-offs, and choose between them, then you will have leveled up and overcome this switch monster. The third challenge on our path focuses on really about thinking about how you demonstrate model and what are the behaviors that you demonstrate to show that you are a leader of some sort. Now, one of the things that I often repeat during my trainings for tech leads is thinking about how you say something matters almost as much as what you say. So there is an idea which is called congruence. What you do and what you say need to align. And there's an interesting observation I've had is that people will always follow what you do more so than what you say, but also how you message something is really key. So behaviors are really stronger than words. And this is where the old saying of leading by example is really key. So you'll find yourselves in situations where you need to be aware of other people's opinions and how your opinion will affect and amplify as a multiplier other people and their perspectives as well. So the way that you speak, the tone that you use, and the model that you use to demonstrate behavior shows whether or not people have more buy-in or less buy-in. Now imagine you have a customer problem that has been around for a long time. It's been a gnarly technical problem that you've never wanted to solve. You're aware of it, but you know it's kind of annoying to have to solve it. It's a hard problem, but now is the time that you actually have to resolve it. There's enough customers that want this issue resolved, but it's not something that you really want to do. How do you express to the team about getting buy-in to get this thing resolved, even if it's something that you don't want to do? Well, you might start off with saying, here's a really annoying problem, such a waste of time, but we have to do it anyway. Can you take care of this? So that's one mode of expressing how you might achieve this. Or, here's a really challenging problem. Our customers would really appreciate it if we can solve this. Let's start working on this together. Now, if you're on the receiving end of both of these messages, there is an element of sort of saying something and making sure that you understand how you turn these problems into something that's a challenging and a growth opportunity. So you have to understand that as a leader, you have to be careful about how your own personal opinions influence other people. Now, what's interesting when I sort of help people understand how you message something matters, as well as what it is that you're messaging, often people will say, well, this feels like lying. It feels like it's not telling the truth. And this is really interesting because this is, once again, this binary mode of thinking about what does truth actually mean. Now, it's quite interesting because if you think about simple sort of adjectives, something that's boring or interesting will be different as you talk to different people because of their different sort of perspectives. Something that is easy or hard will be dictated by perhaps what problems that somebody has had, what challenges they've already overcome. And what is innovative or what's known is also very interesting. What may seem innovative may actually be a known solution in a different space, simply imported to a different place where it's never been used before. And then there's an old adage I like to talk about, which really mirrors this idea that there aren't always two real truths. And here, there are three sides to every story: your story, their story, and the truth. And this is very interesting to sort of think about when you're actually presenting solutions to people or sort of perspectives. There's a model called the ladder of inference. So it comes from Chris Argyris. And it's interesting because it talks about the way that we process information and come up with our own sort of opinion. You often start off with reality and facts. And even in this room, there's a lot of things going on that you can't absorb everything. So you end up selecting the things that you observe and you take notice of. Now, you interpret this and you process this really rapidly in your head, and you start to put assumptions to it, so whether or not you agree with this or not. And this starts to drive you to a particular conclusion about what the right answer must be or what that truth is. And this fuels your beliefs and then ultimately your actions. And this is all happening really rapidly in your head, and you can't really measure this sometimes, and it just happens really rapidly. But what's really fascinating about this is really about this idea about how you interpret a situation and the assumptions you make about it. And often these will be very different from other people's perspectives because they'll have a different perspective with different sort of assumptions that they're making, which can often lead to both sort of conflict but also disagreements about what the current situation is. Our brains process this really rapidly to the point that we don't really notice it, but it affects our decisions and the way that we express things. So some simple examples that you might know about. For instance, there is this sort of paradoxical cube, and this might actually have two different fronts depending on if you look at it from the bottom left-hand corner or the top right-hand corner, and both of them are true. Perhaps you're familiar with this sort of image where there is both the cup and two faces looking at it at the same time, but you might only see one of them. Or perhaps this famous image of a duck or a rabbit in one. So your perspective of what the truth is depends on perhaps the filters that you have, the inbuilt biases that we all have, and the assumptions that you make when you actually present scenarios. And this is something that you really need to think about as you think about the assumptions that you're making, or perhaps you're not even aware that you're making, and what it means as you present the truth. And this is where we encounter our final monster. And this is called the moan monster. So the moan monster is infamous in developer communities. It's insidious because it tunnels into your ear, wraps itself around your brain, filtering how you perceive and how you express things. It's all about what could go wrong, what is not perfect, what problems exist. And although useful in small doses, allowing the moan monster to spend too much time there as a lead developer can lead to an infection that can be hard to get rid of. So to overcome the moan monster, you really need to think about how you communicate. Imagine about somebody that you really respect as an outstanding leader. How do they communicate? What style helps you move and feel engaged in taking up new opportunities, in taking risks? So there are 3 modes that you might use that will impact the team. You can always focus on moaning and complaining about what's wrong and this idea about sort of disempowerment. Or you can start to empathize and ask questions, sort of listening and verbally recognizing people's feelings. Or you can help motivate and help discover people's ways forward, finding an opportunity for them to grow, but also help solve problems. All of these are in your toolkit, but ask yourself, which one do you use? And which one will the moan monster force you to adopt? Always focusing on what's wrong can lead to a sense of we're not good enough or we can't actually solve this problem, and it stops the team from feeling really empowered. So why bother if things aren't going to improve? Instead, really move to empathizing and start to ask questions, understanding how people feel and how they perceive problems. But more than that, go beyond empathizing and find ways to inspire, attract, and motivate. Ask questions to help them find opportunities to move forward and celebrate successes when they actually overcome these things. Success is the sum of small efforts repeated day in and day out, but you need somebody to help inspire and attract people towards trying these things. So our final lesson really about overcoming this moan monster is really understanding how you motivate over moan. Beware of your own internal ideas and how that's affecting and amplifying in your sort of team environment. But choose to inspire and challenge people rather than complain. And when you do, congratulations, you will have overcome the moan monster and leveled up. So we slowly reach the end of our quest together, and I hope you've had a small glimpse into the challenges you will face as a lead developer. And it's been a pleasure to be your guide. I hope you've learned a number of lessons that will make you much more effective. And remember to shift modes away from being a maker to a multiplier, being wary of how you perceive when you add value. Remember that in the real world of people, blurry is the new binary, and that there are rarely perfect solutions to people problems. And finally, when you consider how you act as a role model, remember to motivate over moan, and you choose your communication style, and how you say something matters almost as what you're actually saying. But really, as I mentioned, that these are only 3 small, simple challenges on the way of being a lead developer, and your path will be unique. So remember to understand what's already in your toolkit, continue to add things to your toolkit, and collect different ways of approaching problems and solving these. There will be many more challenges you will face. We've only encountered 3. But I hope that as you grow on your path to being a lead developer, that you will find your way and grow and be excited because you will now be better prepared to actually level up. So the secret, as you may have realized, is that the way of the lead developer is constantly evolving, shifting, and not always clear. However, for each step on the journey, for each challenge you overcome, you'll be better, more resilient, and more effective, and so will your teams as a result. And hopefully you will enjoy and grow in the process. I wish you luck on your quest, and I thank you for your attention.